Move forward with today's webinar. Just want to thank everyone here for attending. For those who don't know me, my name is Gareth. I'm the communications manager here at BCHA. We're very fortunate to have a great guest presenter here today as Peter Pilarski from Tourism AI Network joins us today. With 20 years of experience in digital marketing, communications, and government relations across diverse industries, Peter excels as a versatile strategist. His approach is centered on understanding the big picture and translating it to specific corporate goals and challenges that AI can solve. So we're in for a treat today. Thank you, Peter, for being here. Before I hand it over to him, I just want to make mention of today's sponsor of the webinar, DSC Software. DSC has been a leading supplier of hotel management systems since 1979 and has just released the latest version on Microsoft Azure. Okay, with all that done and dusted, we'll hand it over to Peter here. Thanks again for being here. Take it away.
Perfect. I just want to confirm you can see my screen, Gareth.
Yeah, you good.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction, and it's a pleasure for me to be presenting to all of you today. So thank you for taking the time to join us. So we're going to talk today about harnessing the power of AI in your daily operations. Before we do that, I'm just going to introduce myself quickly here. So as Gareth mentioned, I have a background in communications, digital marketing. So I run a communications agency called CIPR Communications in Calgary. But we do have the honor and pleasure of working with many people in the tourism sector or across British Columbia. Actually is a main area where we have many clients. So we definitely work with a few hotels, DMOs, tourism operators, and others. Importantly, for context, we're part of a global digital marketing network called WSI. And little story about WSI is it's been around since for about 25 years. So WSI likes to say that they've been around since 2BG, so 2 years before Google. Really, they were formed back then around the time when the internet was coming into existence. And Dan Monahan, the person who started WSI, saw the internet coming and thought, we need to help businesses figure this whole internet thing out. And so, fast forward 25 years later, the WSI network is doing the same thing when it comes to artificial intelligence. And so we're really on the leading edge of helping businesses figure this whole AI thing out. I'm part of a committee within the WSI network that's sort of going deep on the AI front. So when I make this presentation, when I talk about a lot of the things I'm talking about, it's not Peter talking, it's Peter talking with a team of world-leading experts in digital marketing that are all pretty deep into the WSI, into the AI world. I like to call myself an AI pragmatist. And when you think about AI or when you listen to podcasts as much as I do, there you sort of have the two groups of people. On one side, you have these AI accelerationists, and they believe that AI is the solution to every problem in the world, and we should accelerate and build it as fast as possible. And on the other side, we have AI doomers, which are, this is an existential threat to humanity. We got to stop it at all costs. This is the worst thing we can be developing. And really, I find myself mostly in the middle of those two groups. I see this here. I see a need to react. Sometimes I'm an accelerationist. Sometimes I'm a doomer. So, I'm really in the middle. And I think that's a pragmatic place to be. And so I mention that because when I talk to people about AI, I hear both of those sides and both of those sort of types of reactions. And my message to you is those are not really helpful places to be, because at the end of the day, this technology is here today. And so we need to figure out today what we're going to do about it and how we're going to incorporate it into our businesses. Finally, I founded the Tourism AI Network in December. So, based on all of the work we do in the tourism sector, which is the sector we love working in the most, I thought, you know what, let's go deep in the AI space in tourism. So we found the Tourism AI Network. And really, we believe in the power of education, collaboration, and community. And so everything we do at the network sort of follows those three beliefs. And that's really how we built the organization. So from an agenda perspective, we're going to do a brief history on artificial intelligence, on the AI revolution, give you a bit of a brief history on kind of what this thing's all about. We're going to go through a few case studies to show you what some hotels around the world are doing with respect to the implementation of AI today. And really, a lot of those case studies are going to be what I would call somewhat more advanced types of AI implementations. And so then after that, we're going to take a step back and we're going to talk about some simpler ways that you can use AI literally immediately after this presentation, or maybe you're already using it in some cases yourselves. But we're going to walk through a few sort of more useful today use case applications. Then we're going to take a step back again. We're going to talk about what it means for jobs and for businesses. And finally, we're going to just talk about how to approach AI as an organization. And I have sort of a fairly structured process that I'm recommending to all businesses with respect to how to make sure that you systematically put AI into your organization. So before we start, every presentation I give, I really like to start off with this quote, which is from Sam Altman. So for those of you who don't know, Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT. And he was on a podcast interview talking to specifically a podcast about marketing. And they were talking about something called artificial general intelligence, so AGI. And artificial general intelligence is a term used in the AI space that's not really that well defined, but generally speaking, it's sort of a term that means a time at which artificial intelligence will be as good or better than humans across all tasks. So this is sort of, we're not there today, but that's a direction that things seem to be heading. This AGI is sort of this big kind of question a lot of people are asking about. And Sam Altman said in a question related to, what does this mean for marketing agencies, strategists, creative professionals? And he said, it means that 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists, and creative professionals for will be easily, nearly instantly, and almost at no cost be handled by AI. So I really like to start with that quote to set the stage for my presentations, because it's kind of a big statement and it's fairly scary. And I can tell you that, back to me being an AI pragmatist, I'm doing this because I run a marketing agency and I see this coming. And I worry about my future and I worry about the future of my employees. And I know that if I don't do something to get on top of this, to get ahead of this, that I'm going to be wiped out. And so all of us need to be thinking about what this means for our jobs, for our businesses, and really that's what we're going to be talking about today in this presentation. So let's start off with a brief introduction to the AI revolution. So just a really, really highly condensed history of AI. So this is actually 70-year-old technology. We've been hearing a lot about it lately, but there's been a lot of really smart people working on this for a long time. Starting in about the 1950s, actually, John McCarthy coined artificial intelligence and really started the very, very first work on what was called neural networks. And then there was sort of this winter period, or this sort of cold period where a lot of the work kind of just froze up. There wasn't a lot of funding. There wasn't a lot going on. And then in the 80s, there was the resurgence of this neural networks, and things started to kind of come back a little bit. And there was this actually guy that was working actually out of Canadian universities, Geoffrey Hinton, who really started pushing these ideas of these neural networks again, and really started pushing the neural network revolution. A lot of people call Geoffrey Hinton the godfather of deep learning. We're going to kind of talk about what that means. But there's a really cool Canadian story here. It's kind of funny because for whatever reason, Canadian funding for scientific research is fairly open, and scientists can kind of research whatever they want. There's a lot less strict parameters in Canada for scientific research than there are in other places where it needs to really be sort of geared towards a very commercial purpose, or a strategic national interest purpose. In Canada, it's sort of like academics can kind of follow their passions and pursue their goals. And so that's actually how these neural networks and artificial intelligence really took off, is because all of these smart people that were sort of shunned around the world came to Canada, including Geoffrey Hinton, who's from the UK originally, and they started doing their research here. They started having conference here. So hooray for Canada! We're early sort of people in the AI space, and really the enablers of allowing this technology to happen. So since sort of that time, the technology started advancing, computer technology, computer computational breakthroughs started advancing. And really in the 2000s to now, the rise of deep learning started to happen. And we started to get major breakthroughs in technology, computational power, data started becoming really available and more useful. So that's really what led to where we are today, which is this revolution of AI. So what is artificial intelligence? I've put a couple definitions on this slide. I'm going to kind of get a little deeper and talk about it a little bit more. But Dennis Hassabis, who's one of the co-founders of a company called DeepMind, says it's the science of making machines smart. And then there's an organization called the Marketing AI Network or Institute, actually, that said it's the science of making software smart. So I have this funny picture on this slide here of this sort of black box with this child's brain and all these different things going on, because Jan LeCun, who's right now he's the head of AI for Meta, and a really, really smart scientist, he kind of talks about neural networks being like a black box. So, sort of it's this black box and it's got a million knobs sticking out, and the knobs are adjusted by these complex algorithms, and then the black box spits out these outputs. And so that's how he sort of describes these neural networks. And the reason he calls it a black box, which is a little bit sort of frightening, I guess a little bit, is because even guys like him don't know exactly how they work or why they work the way they work. So we have basically this technology that's producing these really intelligent outcomes. We sort of know how they work. They're modeled kind of on the brain in terms of how the brain was developed, but nobody exactly knows how they work, which is, a little bit interesting, I think. So how is this possible? So there's really kind of three sets or three subsets to what make this sort of term artificial intelligence. So deep learning really is this at the core of artificial intelligence. And again, it's inspired by the human brain and the function of the brain's neural networks. And what it does is it takes large data sets, really, really large data sets, a lot of computing power, and basically learns complex patterns in that data. So it sort of takes a bunch of data, figures out what the patterns are, and then it's able to make predictions based on those patterns. Machine learning is a process basically that takes all of that data and all of that sort of all those complex powers or patterns, and then uses algorithms to sort of fine tune and train and sort of make it better over time. So essentially, it's sort of training itself using this machine learning, and all of that together is sort of what defines what we know today as artificial intelligence. So I like to use this example in my presentations of the IBM Watson, which is a tool that's used in healthcare. And just to give you some context here, IBM Watson, basically is a tool that can read everything that's going on in the scientific research at sort of at almost instantaneously, and sort of be able to be cutting edge in terms of understanding what's going on with people and making diagnoses. If a human was going to sort of take the same amount of input, or basically if you took all of the learnings, all of the reports that are sort of put out there by the scientific community, it'd be about 160 hours of reading a week just to keep up on the new data and the new research that's coming out. Watson can do that in seconds, apply that research almost instantaneously, and make predictions about sort of maybe what's happening with a person. So sort of gives you a bit of a sense of how these things work. So we've been hearing about AI a lot, but the reality is all of us have been using AI quite a lot, actually, whether we know it or not. So things like YouTube that suggest videos, that's artificial intelligence, basically sort of at work without us knowing it. Netflix recommending shows and movies. All of the types of sort of technology that we use really use artificial intelligence basically to recognize patterns, make predictions, right? So that's sort of exactly how this works and how this happens. So we've been doing these things for actually quite a few years. They've been getting better as we all experience. But something happened on November 30th, 2022. And that was the date that OpenAI introduced ChatGPT 3 to the world. And that was sort of a moment in history, sort of a line in the sand, when it went from technology that was baked into many of the things we use every day to technology all of a sudden that's accessible to all of us. And so what happened was, on that date, AI got democratized. That means all of us basically had access to basically a free version of a chatbot that had all this, incredible power in it, and it really took the world by storm. So ChatGPT was the fastest adopted technology in the history of humanity. It went to 1 million users in 5 days, and it went to 100 million users in less than 2 months. And right now, I believe it's got about 100 million users a day, is the last I heard. So it's really, really fast adoption of technology. People have really, it's really taken off in comparison to any other technology. I mean, you look at Instagram, you look at some of these others that sort of were fairly fast growing technologies. really blew them away by a long shot. So this was a fairly major point in history, and one we're going to look back at as a major inflection point in the history of AI. But it didn't stop there, right? So this AI revolution has been moving fast. So November 2022, ChatGPT 3 came out. And then ChatGPT 4 came out March 13th, 2023, just a few months later, 10 times more powerful than the original version in just 3.5 months. To give you context, ChatGPT 3 scored in the bottom 10th percentile on the bar exam. ChatGPT 4 scores in the top 90th percentile. So a lot more intelligent, a lot more capable. ChatGPT 4 also has larger context windows. I'm going to talk about that in a few slides, and the ability to do some really neat stuff like create custom GTPs, which I'm going to talk about in a few slides as well. But the point is that in a very short period of time, development is just skyrocketing at a pace really we've never seen with any technology in the history of humanity. So, here's another example. This is a tool that you can create images with called Midjourney. And this is basically, if you look at version 3 to version 5, that's less than 12 months of development. And I mean, version 5 looks just like Mr. Bean versus version 3 does not at all look like Mr. Bean. So, drastic improvement in less than 12 months, just drastic improvement. And then in February 15th of this year, OpenAI introduced this dandy to the world called Sora. So Sora AI is basically a AI tool that you can use where you basically type in language. The prompt here is a stylish woman walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm, glowing neon, animated, blah blah blah, and it created this 1-minute video. So this is a leap forward that really blew people's minds. Now, Sora isn't available to everybody yet. It's currently going through a process called red teaming, which is basically humans using it and sort of trying to figure out, is it going to cause problems? Is it going to create videos that that aren't okay? That type of thing. But we're expecting Sora to get released here, within sort of the next month or a couple months. It's coming soon. But I mean, this is incredible if you think about it. A video like this, 1 minute long, with just a prompt like this, really mind-blowing kind of stuff. So in his book Les Miserables, Victor Hugo made a statement. He said that a revolution is seldom recognized in its time. And the thing is about AI is that it's a revolution and it's happening right in front of us. It's actually happening. We can all see it happening, and we all got to figure out what to do about it. So there's another smart AI scientist called Mustafa Solomon. He wrote a great book called The Coming Wave. It's a very dense book, but lots of good, useful information. He's a very thoughtful kind of guy to listen to. But he said that this will be the greatest, most rapid acceleration in wealth and prosperity in human history. He also said in that book, billions of people will soon have broad and equal access to the best lawyers, doctors, strategists. Everyone will have a world-class team on their side and in their corner. So, that's a fairly significant change from where we were only just a year or so ago. A couple of people, like Sundar Pichai, talks about basically AI being more profound than electricity or fire. And Bill Gates talking about it being as fundamental as the invention of the microchip. And so I'm actually going to go back a slide and talk a little bit about the coming wave. And really, when we talk about what's called general purpose technology, a lot of people like to talk about it in waves. That's why sort of there's a lot of sort of language around sort of these waves and these waves of technology, because these technologies basically are technologies that have a general impact on every human on the planet, or will impact every human on the planet. So things like fire, things like electricity, things like the internet, the cell phone. And to give you some context, in the history of humanity, there's been arguably between 24 and 26 of these major scientific waves that have sort of transformed humanity. And then in the last 100 years, there's been arguably about 7 or 8 of these waves. And in the last 20 years, there's been 7 or 8 of these waves. In the last 20 years, there's been about about four of these waves. And there's an expectation that these waves are going to accelerate and technology is going to keep moving forward. So, we're at a pace of technological change unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of humanity. And so, in fact, everything I've showed you now, as impressive as it is the worst form of AI you'll ever experience in your life. I really like this graph here. It sort of shows the history of human progress over time, and the little animated character is where we are today and where we're about to go, which is straight up in terms of human progress. So we're really, really living in a revolution. This is really an unprecedented time, and we're really just getting started. So I don't know where it's going to sort of end up, and if anybody tells you they do know, I don't know if I believe them. But there is one guy that's really smart that is predicting at least the next 10 years. And he is the CEO of a company called NVIDIA, Jensen Huang. And so NVIDIA, for context to those people that don't know, is the company that makes the processing, the computer chips essentially that power AI technologies largely. That's sort of the simple way to talk about it. They do a lot more than that. And so he's really on the cutting edge of the technological revolution that's powering the AI sort of wave of technology. And he talks about four waves of the AI revolution. And so wave one is these AI startups, the chat GTPs and all these other tools that we're going to talk about during this presentation, which are called foundational models. And then also the building of the infrastructure to support AI, which is things like his chips and things like data centers and computing power and all these different things. And so that's kind of where we are right now. That's kind of where we are in this whole sort of evolution or revolution of the next few years. We're just about to enter, or we're just entering right now, wave two, which is this enterprise generative application. So this is really where the largest enterprises in the world start to figure out how to bake these generative AI tools into their tools. And so, I'm going to use an example of HubSpot, which is a CRM tool. So right now, in order for me to sort of send an email out to my list in HubSpot, somebody did a calculation once. There's 21 clicks you have to do. You have to 21 different times to sort of set up your email and get it out to your list, right? So imagine you're doing those 21 clicks, but there's somebody watching over your shoulder, watching what you do, and then you never have to do it again because they know how to do it. So that's really where these AI co-pilots or these AI agents are going to play a role. They're going to be able to sort of mimic what you're doing and then become basically your personal assistants and basically help facilitate the work you're doing and help sort of, take away all those tedious clicks and all those things that you have to do. So we're expecting kind of essentially every tool you use right now in your hotel and in your business operations is going to get AI baked into it one way or the other. And it's going to make using those tools a lot more efficient and effective. And then that'll free up your time to do sort of higher value things, right? Wave three, which is expected to be the largest wave, is this sort of heavy industries component of it. That's really where it starts to affect things like manufacturing, mining, energy. Think about robotics. Think about self-driving cars, self-driving mining, all that kind of stuff. I think this is also potentially where it's going to have an impact on the hotel industry. So I'm going to show you a slide later, but there are some robots already in China. China's a little ahead when it comes to robotics in the AI front, but are there going to be robots that are going to be able to help facilitate part of your hotel operations? That's probably something we're going to start to see in wave three. And then wave four is what he calls sovereign AI. And that's really where countries start using AI for really their own intelligence and culture. So, it's really governments baking in and absorbing AI tools right into everything they do, all their websites, all their communications. It's all sort of AI enabled. And then it's sort of having an influence on culture and sort of sort of a collective intelligence of a country. And I don't know much about that. Jensen Huang talks about that quite a bit. It's something he's pretty passionate about. And so and just for context, he's talking about these four waves happening over likely around the next 10 to 15 years. So this isn't something that's far into the distant future. This is something that's sort of happening right now. And is going to be happening. And the reality of the situation is the world is going to change in ways that many of us aren't even prepared sort of to understand. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a context of the history and where it's going. So now I thought we'd change direction a little bit. We talk a little bit about how hotel operators are using AI technology. Now, These are not my case studies. These are case studies from hotel operators around the world that I found. So just give you that caveat. So the Hilton brand, for example, they they implemented a chatbot for customer service. So they did this in a Chinese mobile platform. And really, it provided 24/7 customer support for frequently asked questions using natural language processing, so people can kind of talk to, just like if you've ever used like an OpenAI type tool, you talk to it, it talks back, it's sort of conversational. Provided travel advisory services, direct reservation capabilities. Handled 50,000 inquiries very quickly. 94% customer satisfaction rating, reduced obviously the workload for humans, and actually increased bookings due to a more streamlined process. So that's just one example that I found. Another one is this Pure Blue Palais, which is not my first language, obviously, French. But they basically implemented an AI solution with Duetto for basically having a dynamic pricing model. And so they basically, implemented Duetto Autopilot, and then they automated demand-driven rate optimization. And then, they sort of expanded its guest demographic and enhanced overall revenue by offering tailored experiences, improving spa services and dining options. So they saw sort of increased metrics or better metrics within 4 months of implementation. Daily average rate grew by 37%. Average revenue per available room surged by 115%. Occupancy rates rose by 29%. So this had a fairly significant impact on their business. And I think importantly also, it also attracted a more diverse clientele willing to spend more money on some of those extra services, which was a bonus for them. This one is really interesting, and I talked about robotics before. So this is Flyzoo Hotel in China. And they actually started using AI-powered facial recognition software to help with access and security. That's not all they've done, but you can see here a picture of their elevator, where basically you just look at the elevator and it'll know that you are you, and it'll let you up. You can see these kiosks here in the image. And then they also in China in the same hotel chain are testing hotel robots. So there's hotel robots that will bring you your food at the restaurant. There's hotel robots that'll take you to your room. There's hotel robots that'll bring you fresh towels. So I mean, it's sort of interesting. Like I said, China's fairly advanced in compared to the rest of the world when it comes to robotics, but they're certainly testing this technology. I don't know how it would be perceived in Canada, but it's an interesting case study here. Intercontinental Hotel and Resorts. I think to me this is actually the most interesting and applicable, quick applicable case study, which is multilingual room assistant. So the cool thing about these AI technologies is that it translates very easily into many different languages, and so being able to allow people to communicate in their native language, I think would be a huge thing for many of your guests, right? So essentially, they introduced an AI conversational assistant with voice control for room amenities, immediate access to hotel services, multilingual support, and they integrated this with existing hotel systems. So they saw some good results here as well: increased customer satisfaction, reduced front desk inquiries, and they say they validated its impact within 6 months. So pretty neat case study as well. Just two more quick ones here. This is more on the restaurant side of things. So these aren't necessarily the types of restaurants, but I wanted to include these as well, just to give you a bit of a sense and a flavor for how AI can be used in different ways. So in this case, Planet Pizza, AI-powered menu optimization. And so really what they did is they got an AI sort of implementation expert, and really they started using that AI implementation expert to look at the historic data, sales data, understand kind of what things package together, how they package together. And then they started to basically, sort of create a dynamic menu essentially that can make recommendations, adding beverages, I think in this case it was garlic knots and garlic bread for pasta dishes, adding a new customer favorites category. So, all of those different little tweaks basically allowed them to have an increase of 23% in monthly sales. So certainly got that average ticket up. which everybody wants. So that's kind of more simple case study, but a neat one. And similarly, Jets Pizza, they got a conversational AI bot for order and menu assistance. And so they basically implemented the same thing, an AI, conversational AI. And really, it was basically taking orders, and it was, sort of making sure things were accurate, handling inquiries, and it would also provide personalized recommendations. So they saw 92% order completion rate for phone bot customers, which is pretty impressive. 14% more profit than the third-party phone management service they were using. So obviously, it was performing better than humans in this case, and then increased customer engagements and transactions. So again, just wanted to sort of show you guys these things to give you a flavor of what's possible. The final one here, this is actually a press release that came out a couple months ago from a company called Klarna, and they're basically like a customer service chatbot. And they were sort of, sort of after their first month in operation, they put out this press release. And so they tied into OpenAI, so the ChatGPT interface through an API. And they did 2.3 million conversations globally in their first month, did the equivalent of 700 full-time agents, 25% drop in repeat inquiries, on par with human agents and customer satisfactions. Errands resolved in less than 2 minutes compared to 11 minutes previously, so things were resolved more quickly. And obviously, what's really cool about these chatbots, as I mentioned before, available in 23 markets, 24/7, and communicates in 35 languages. So, I mean, that's a major unlock, I think, for many hotels to be able to communicate in 35 languages, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in multiple markets. I think it's a pretty neat thing. So what I just showed you I just walked you fairly quickly through some fairly I would call more advanced AI applications, although not that advanced. But I want to now sort of take a step back and go through some really more basic things, which is sort of more of the out-of-the-box AI that's available to all of you today. And so just for context, something like an OpenAI or a ChatGPT, just to give you some context in terms of some terminology. So those are all called large language models. And really, a large language model is basically just a model that's based on massive amounts of data. It's trained on massive amounts of data, text data, that allows it to generate text, answer questions, translate languages, et cetera, et cetera. So just to give you context on how these things are trained, essentially is they have a really, really large amount of, like, vast, huge amount of data, and then they duplicate that data, and then they basically corrupt the duplicated data. So they'll take out letters, take out words, sort of make it not the same as this data. And then they train the model based, the sort of they get it to fix the corrupted data based on the correct data. And that basically allows it to create really complex computations and sort of algorithms to make predictions, essentially. So, okay, if you use these 5 words together, here's the next words that should go based on all of these vast amounts of data. So that's a really sort of crude way of explaining how it all works, or how these models are trained. But really, the best way to think about them is they're prediction machines. So they make predictions based on the input you provide. And the more context you provide in your input, the better the predictions they're going to make. So that's sort of, and they use these complicated statistical calculations to do that work, way beyond me and I'm sure any of us in the room. And then built on top of the large language models are chatbots, really, which is the interface that we use to chat with these things. And these chatbots basically, sound very convincing. They're sort of designed on top of the LLM to sort of communicate with you with a certain way, to have a bit of a personality, a bit of a style. And so that's sort of how we interact with these tools. Essentially, it sounds very conversational. Sounds like you're talking to a human, and they really simulate human interaction. And so that's sort of how the two things fit together. So some of the popular models and chatbots and sort of AI tools, which is what we're going to call them, things like ChatGPT 4 Turbo. Obviously, Google has a similar model called Gemini, and the other sort of major big multimodal model is called Claude 3. So multimodal just means that it operates in various different modes. I'm going to show you a little bit about that in a second here. There's some other ones like Pi AI. So it's more text. It's actually a little bit more multimodal, so it doesn't quite belong there. But Pi is a conversational AI that sort of It's supposed to sound like your best friend, or sound like your spouse maybe, in sort of very empathetic kind of tone. A really cool tool is called Perplexity. So Perplexity basically is an AI tool that will actually give you like citations. So it'll actually search the internet and it'll tell you where it got the answers from. So it gives you the answer you're looking for, but it also gives you context of where it found that answer, which is really helpful as a research tool if you're researching things and you actually need to sort of have that context of where the information came from. Um, Image generation, my favorite tool. So I just, by the way, I've highlighted all of my favorite tools here, or I've bolded all of my favorite tools that I use on the daily. So Leonardo AI is a really great image generation tool, although there's some others, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, Firefly, and there's many, many others. Speech synthesis, 11 Labs, really cool tool. So literally you can record yourself for 15 seconds and then fake your own self, your own voice, and then sort of make it sound like it's you. I actually don't recommend doing that. What I'll say on a lot of these tools is that if you don't know who the people are behind these tools, you don't know who built them, you don't know who owns them, be careful about giving them your voice and be careful about giving them your identity. Now, tools like Google Gemini, ChatGPT 4, a little bit sort of well-known companies, it's a bit of a different beast, and you're not really giving them the same information, but that's just my one caveat on some of these giving your voice tools or giving your image tools or your video tools. There are some risks for sure, so just be aware of the risks would be my caveat there. But really, when it comes to the gold standard of these tools, still currently, it's an arguable point, but I'm going to argue that it's still ChatGPT 4. So just to give you context, it's trained on an estimated 100 trillion parameters, so 100 trillion pieces of data. It has what's called a context window of 128,000 tokens. So a token is really a fraction of the word of a word. And so again, when I say it's a prediction machine, it predicts the next tokens based on the tokens you provided. So sometimes a token can be a full word, sometimes it's a quarter of a word, just depends on how long the word is. But for context, 128,000 tokens is about 300 pages of text. And so that's sort of, you can basically input 300 pages of text for context, and then it'll provide an output based on that. That'll be fairly accurate. Its knowledge cutoff was April 2023, but it can search the internet, which is great. It's multimodal, so it not only understands text, it understands images, it understands sounds. You can talk to it. I'm going to show you some slides on that. And then it has something called advanced data analytics within it as well. So and it's good for things like pattern recognition. You can put a spreadsheet in and get it talking to your spreadsheet. So really cool stuff when it comes to a little bit more on the advanced side of analyzing data. It's got some really cool tools. It can do things like generate code for you. So I've put in a picture of a website before and said, give me the code for this website, and it's given me the code for the website. So really kind of neat advanced kind of capabilities. So in terms of tools like ChatGPT, so this is a little bit more basic use cases. One use case that I like to use it a lot for, which I recommend for everybody to just try it out with, is brainstorming ideas. So, again, it's trained on 100 trillion parameters. So, if you think you're a big picture, I think I'm a big picture thinker, but I don't know if I have 100 trillion things in my head that I can sort of access and make predictions based on. So obviously it can take a lot of data and sort of make analysis. So I gave a couple sample prompts here. So can you give me ideas for strategy for a strategy to maximize staff efficiency in my hotel's housekeeping function? So that's one way you can sort of prompt it. But as I said before, the more context you give, the better the output you're going to get. So can you give me ideas for a strategy to maximize staff efficiency in my 65-room hotel, covering staff levels, optimal shift schedules, and creating ways to incentivize employees to speed up and reduce cleaning supply usage? You're going to get a better output. You're going to get a better outcome if you prompt it that way. So there's a little bit of an art and a science to prompting, but always think the more context I give, the better the output I'm going to get. Here's another one, rewriting content, really good at rewriting content. So, rewrite this marketing copy for my boutique hotel, emphasizing the benefits of staying in a boutique property as opposed to a large chain without mentioning the words boutique or large chain. So it'll get really creative with its language, make the copy friendly, inviting, and persuasive. So you can tell it how to respond. You can tell it how you want it to sound. You could tell it to write it in Japanese, same copy, right? I mean, that's an amazing superpower if you think about it compared to where we were just 18 months ago. producing executive summaries. So this is where that advanced data analytics comes into play. You can literally put in URLs. You can literally put in PDFs and just tell it to summarize it for you. Take out all the main points. So really good for speeding up a lot of the work, a lot of the reading that we have to do. Customer reviews, responding to customer reviews, great tool for this. So, act as a customer service professional that works in a hotel and provide a response to the following feedback in an empathetic and compassionate voice. So I really love things like this because, sometimes people leave a review and we're not feeling too hot about that review, or we're feeling away about that review. This can sort of help us with the tone. It can help us with making sure we kind of get it right. And importantly, when we use these types of things, we're always the human in the loop. So we're using this as a tool to supplement our work and to help us. But, we're not just going to take the output and then sort of post that as the response to the review. We're going to take the output, we're going to read it, we're going to edit it, and then we're going to post it, right? So it just sort of helps us, and then the other thing you could do is give me 10 responses in an empathetic tone. And then you can pick ones that sort of work, and you can sort of cut and paste them together and sort of come up with something that meets the situation and meets the way you're feeling. So there is a framework that's recommended. It's called the ACE prompt framework. And really, this is the same framework as being an effective communicator. So act as X, so act as a professional, or act as a marketer, act as a senior vice president, act as a, whatever, a customer service representative. Give it context. They love be as clearly defined as possible in context. And then enhance. Are there any other things you'd like it to take care of, observe? What types of outputs are you looking for? Are you looking for a list, a table, a spreadsheet, coding language? Sort of be as specific as possible about what you want the output to be, and you're going to get exactly what you ask for. So I included this here. Obviously, you guys, if you want these slides after, you can have them. They're really great little cheat sheet to help you sort of think about different ways to prompt, very simple prompting kind of sort of framework that can get you started. So a lot of information. What does it mean for jobs and businesses? It means it's going to have an impact on jobs and businesses. So this is a chart I like to show. It's the change in number of Upwork jobs since ChatGPT was released. Obviously, writing, customer service, translation services, all the things I talked about already, down significantly, and they're going to change more. So, jobs are going to change. We don't know yet how, where. We don't know if they're going to be eliminated, but there's going to be a fairly significant impact. There's going to be a fairly significant need for reskilling. This is fairly old. This is from 2020, but the World Economic Forum said 50% of all employees will need reskilling by 2025. Well, we're not very far away from that, and I don't think we're even scratching the surface yet of starting to address this issue. I really like this chart. It's disruption of skills, and it really shows skills of the future, and things like analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, motivation, curiosity, lifelong learning. There's a real pattern when it comes to these things, is that all of these skills are authentically human skills. So we're really going to have to double down on the soft skills, on what makes us human, because the machine's going to be able to do a lot of the things that, quite frankly, humans don't like to do. And so, I always tell people in the tourism and hospitality industry that this will actually hopefully take away the parts of our jobs we hate, so we can spend more time in front of our customers, delighting them, providing great service, doing all the things that we like to do in the service and the hospitality industry. But that's what we're going to have to double down on in the future. So it's going to change the way we work. There's no question about it. It's going to have a very, very big impact. And this impact's starting now. We're not feeling it quite yet, but we're going to start feeling it in the next 2-3 years in a big way. So, my message is it's time now to get started and to get ready. I put in here that it was estimated that Einstein's IQ is 160. ChatGPT 4's IQ, based on sort of common tests, is somewhere between 124 and 152. And it's really important to keep in mind that ChatGPT 4 is, even though it was released when it was released, it was actually built earlier than that. It's about 18-month-old technology. We're expecting some new version of OpenAI's ChatGPT to come out probably before the summer. That's likely going to blow us all away in ways we're not even prepared for. And so, the point is that this is going to scale knowledge work. It's going to change the way we do business. It's going to change the way we think about business. And we really need to start thinking about this today, immediately, on what we're going to do about it. So I go back to Sam Altman's quote here about 95% of all of what marketers use agencies strategies for every day, and I put marketers in sort of parentheses or in a box here because you can change that word out for just about any knowledge work profession that you can think of. So it's not just marketers that are going to be impacted; it's all of us, and so we all need to think deeply about what this means for our careers and for the future. So final section here is really how to approach AI as an organization. And so we've developed some processes here. So I have a 5-step process that I've developed. It's starting off with conduct an initial AI business analysis. So, what's your starting point? Understand your current position and your future aspirations, and understand who in your organization is using AI and adopting AI, who's passionate about it, who's resistant to it. Sort of get a sort of a starting point for your organization. Invest in AI literacy. There's lots to learn here. There's lots of sort of hands-on knowledge and work and experience that will really help organizations figure out how to do this. Form an AI task group or a working group of some kind that's cross-functional on your team. So make sure there's a leader or a person from each part of your organization, part of a task force, actively talking about AI. You need to cultivate a corporate philosophy on AI. So what do you believe about AI? Who can use AI? How can they use AI? What are the limits? Where's the human in the loop? There's a lot of sort of internal policy discussions that need to be had related to this. And then finally, develop an AI roadmap. And I'm going to walk you through these just a little bit more. So obviously, do an impact. Brent, I see your hand. I'm going to answer questions here as soon as I'm done in about 3 minutes. So do an impact assessment on your team. Kind of, are there a lot of processes in your organization that could be automated? Is there things that AI could be a solution to, right? What's the state of data in your organization? I think this is a big, big issue for a lot of organizations, that the data is not good enough, not clean enough. And that's really a starting point, because you can't use data if it's not good data, kind of garbage in and garbage out principles. Do you have standard operating procedures, and are they up to date? That's another great place to start, and a really important place to start, because those will really be important in terms of getting the AI lift you're looking for in your organization. Again, what impact could this have on your team? How can human resources be redeployed if you can become more efficient and effective? And then obviously what retraining might be needed in your current workforce to sort of to make this transition happen. Obviously, invest in AI education. Today's really a great start, but this is a lot of information really quickly, so I don't expect you to absorb too much of it. Professor Ethan Mollick, he just wrote a book that I'm reading right now. Really one of the leading kind of voices in the AI. His principle number 1 is always bring AI to the table. It means always start using AI every day in your work, every day in your life, and just seeing kind of how it works. Start bringing it to the table, seeing where it might be able to help. That's the best way to learn. These things don't come with a user manual, which is kind of interesting and different from other software and other technology. And so the only way to learn is by doing. There's a lot of great resources online, ebooks and webinars and all kinds of things, and podcasts. I listen to so much content, it's crazy. Finally, join the Tourism AI Network. We're going to be talking about AI specifically in the tourism space a lot, and we're going to be talking about a lot of the things we're doing there. Obviously, these responsible AI use policies and principles. There's a lot of research out there showing that employees are using AI, whether their employers know it or not, and they're using it secretly. And there's some implications of that. There's some things that can go wrong if they're using them wrong. They could put data into the wrong spot, and that data could be compromised. So it's really important for organizations to sort of, as a starting point, really develop some AI use policies and some principles, and then start talking about those policies, start putting some things in place, clear policies in place, who can use what where. And I actually have mine on my website as well, so that I can let the world know how I'm using AI in my organization, which is something would be advisable to do, especially if you're doing something like a chat bot, just to let your clients know that that's what you're doing. Create an AI council or working group, again, multifunctional and multi-department. It's really important to have sort of top down, so senior level, and then bottom up, because at the end of the day, it's the people from the bottom up that are doing the things every day that know where their job can be artificial, that it can be intelligently automated, more so than the senior leadership team. So it's really important to bring both levels to the table and have sort of collaborative discussions. Just to give you context, at my company, CIPR Communications, we have a weekly 1 hour internal workshop on AI that I lead. We have a monthly 1 to 2 hour meeting, which is really about sort of talking about automating tasks and how we can, we literally go through a workflow that somebody does in my company every day, and we talk about how we can automate it with AI. And then I expect my staff to spend an hour per day out of their day on AI education practice, listening to podcasts, doing other things. So, we're pretty deep into it. That's probably a lot more than a lot of organizations be prepared to do. But I think everybody's going to have to get there sooner rather than later. And then finally, building an AI roadmap for your business. Really kind of, looking forward to the future. What do we need to do? Where do we need to invest? Where do we need to reskill? All these types of things. So we've actually developed a process that actually helps businesses walk through this step-by-step process. And you sort of get all of the things that I just talked about out of this process. So happy to talk to anybody if they want to talk about this process and going through this process with their organization. But this process really is about going through your organization, your processes, your workflows, and actually actively starting to talk about how AI can be implemented into those workflows to make them more efficient. So this isn't some theoretical activity. This is literally talking into individuals, talking at a task level. What are your tasks? Breaking them down. Okay, can we automate this? Where can we do that? That type of thing. So it's very sort of roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty kind of work, but it's really an effective way to start talking through AI in your organization. And it's purposefully done over about a 2 to 3 month period to give your team time to start developing processes and to start adapting and adopting and to start having conversations. And also, so if you're going to do all the other stuff I just talked about, that's great. But also just get a paid AI tool like a ChatGPT and start using it. So my challenge to all of you is get a paid AI tool and don't use Google for a month and just see what happens. I think that's the best way to sort of dive in, and I think you're going to be surprised with how it is. So I have some resources available here. I don't know how easy this is to scan from your screen, but I'll leave it up here for a couple minutes. And that is pretty much the end of my presentation. Gareth, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, sure thing. So I know Brent briefly raised his hand, but I think that was more of a goodbye because I don't see him on the
Okay. Yeah, totally.
participant list now. There were a couple questions that came in. One was how might AI enhance security and guest safety within a hotel? Do you have any ideas around that one at all?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly that case study I showed with respect to the facial recognition technology, but I will say that I'm not that convinced that Canadians will be too keen on that. But beyond that, certainly security cameras and security systems, they're all getting intelligent automation baked into them. So I'm actually working with a customer not in the hotel space, but I have a client that's in the security business, and their technology, for example, they'll set up security cameras on a property, and it will only it'll intelligently record only situations where there's a reason to record, as an example, right? So it'll only kind of record certain kind of parts of the day. So that's just like one example that comes to mind. But yeah, that's sort of all that comes to mind for now, Gareth.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. Another one was you had mentioned podcasts a few different times.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on that? And I know you mentioned a few authors as well, but do you have any specific podcasts that for further
Yes.
learning in AI?
Definitely. So one of my favorite podcasts is called the Artificial Intelligence Show. It's and I'm just actually opening my podcast app here, but to remind myself. But the Artificial Intelligence Show is a fantastic one. It's once a week, and what they do a great job of is they really go deep in distilling kind of like a little bit behind the news story. So they'll kind of talk about what's new in AI for the week, and then they'll start talking. They'll really dive deep. They're almost like former reporters. So I really like that show. Another great one is called the Daily AI Breakdown. So that's a daily, about a 12-minute podcast, and it's really good. It's really fantastic. It's 12 minutes a day. So it starts off with sort of one sort of deep sort of deep dive into one topic, and then it'll give like 5 or 7 minutes of just sort of what's going on that day with some analysis. So really, really good stuff. Another podcast that's not specifically AI related, but he talks to some really, really good guests is the Lex Friedman podcast. So if you start following the space, he'll talk to guys like Sam Altman, he'll talk to guys like Jan LeCun, and those are like 2 hour conversations, but they're really deep and they're really helpful. So those would be my top three on the podcast side. Um, yeah, there's and then this Professor Ethan Mullick. If you want to find him on LinkedIn, he posts a lot on LinkedIn, Ethan Mullick. And then he has a book that he just came out with. And then he also has a newsletter that he comes out with. His book is called, let me just find it here. Co-Intelligence. It literally just came out this week. I'm just listening to it right now. And his newsletter is called One Useful Thing, and where he sort of kind of dives deep. So he's an academic professor that does a lot of testing and works with like some of the largest consulting firms and stuff in the world, and really does some really cool experimentation. So really good stuff.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through the chat box right now. So, and we're bumping up on 2 o'clock here. So, with that being said, Peter, thank you very much for being here with us today, taking the time out. Yeah, some really good resources there, and case studies certainly useful for how hotels are adopting this AI currently. So, lots of useful things in there. Just a quick note to everyone who's still with us. This webinar will be, well, it has been recorded and it will be circulated via our weekly newsletter next week. It can also be found on the member portal and the website in the next coming days. So you can share it with your team and anyone else who might be interested in this space. It will be available soon enough. Just want to say also thanks to DSE for sponsoring. And just hand it over to Peter. Any final thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, no, for sure. So thank you so much for the time. Again, my only, well, two things for sure. If you want to talk more, get in touch. So my contact information is on the screen right now. And honestly, the number one piece of advice I can give to every single person on this call is just start using AI. You'll be surprised by just using it, how quickly you're going to figure out how useful it is.